That's all we need? Is it 6:30 yet?
Yeah, you believe it? I made it.
We have two, looks like 2, 3 minutes.
I have 6:30 on the dot.
Oh, that clock's slow then.
I'm ready to go. Y'all ready?
I'm ready.
How about in the back row? Y'all ready?
Back row ready?
It's very nice to meet you. I have food in my mouth.
All right.
It's very nice to meet you on the picture.
We're going to call this meeting to order of the Blue Ribbon Capital Projects Vision 2025 Plan Advisory Board for December 18th. And want to announce that we do have quorum. And at this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes from our December 4th, 2014 meeting.
I so move.
Got a motion
And second.
and a second? All those in, is there any discussion, any revisions? Hearing none? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, a like sign. Hearing none, the motion carries. Next, we're going to have a discussion on stormwater utility program by Gina Thompson. But before we do, just want to see if our city manager has anything she wants to share before we get started.
I'm gonna share some things with you afterwards.
Excellent.
Let her go through stormwater
Awesome.
first, and then we're gonna talk about some future steps.
Awesome. Gina, you have the floor.
Okay, the stormwater utility rate, we did kind of talk with you a little bit before when we went over all the financing options, so this will be a little bit more in-depth, just to give you a better background as to how it came up and why we're talking about it now and even why we're recommending it to you.
Almost the exact presentation we did for council 2 years ago.
Right. So basically, stormwater runoff. The definition is that water reaches rivers, lakes, and oceans by means of flowing across developed and undeveloped surfaces. So when land is left in its natural state, you have the surface that will be permeable, and the rain will go into and eventually become groundwater, or it will flow into rivers, lakes, and oceans. But as we develop and create concrete surfaces and buildings and parking lots, that water doesn't have anywhere to go, and so it creates the stormwater runoff. And back in '72, our federal government created the Clean Water Act. And this was the basis for our National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, which was applied at the time to cities over 100,000. Phase 2 began in 2003 and was applied to cities under 100,000. Our TSEC, which is our Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, required that cities under 100,000 to implement a stormwater program, which we did here in the city of Louisville in 2007. So it's very specific, the stormwater management plan that we have to report to them. We have to include specific things related to best management practices and ways that we're reducing pollutants and protecting our stormwater quality. So that's an ongoing initiative that we currently do here in the city.
And Ms. Bassinger is with us tonight, and she is your stormwater expert. That is her department that manages that program.
So the Public Services, as Donna just said, oversees compliance and files the annual report with TSEC. Currently funded through our utility fund is $458,000. This money funds 2 stormwater inspectors and a stormwater specialist. It also funds our sustainability manager and household hazardous waste programs or recycling programs. Any of our best management practices are funded in the utility fund. Also in the general fund, we have $781,000. We have a crew of 7 employees. This includes that crew that David Stocks was talking to you about last week when we were talking about the creek channel cleanups. That's included here, as well as some ongoing initiatives we've had for years over in the general fund to work on maintenance of our creeks, our channels, our stormwater collection system, and all of our inlet boxes. So that's funded in the general fund, along with our street sweeping program, which we increased our funding for this fiscal year for 14-15. And so right now we have funding for quarterly sweeping of all of our residential streets and sweeping of major arterial streets every 2 months. It also funds sweeping of our Old Town streets whenever we have some of our major special events. So these ongoing costs that we're currently doing are really recommended to remain in those operating budgets. We aren't saying at this time that we want to move that money or those expenses over to the stormwater fee. The stormwater fee can pay for things like that, but I think it's really more important at this point to get new items out there and to do some of these capital projects that we've been talking about. So right now, that would be our recommendation. Currently, our capital projects have been funded through GO bond programs, like you're looking at right now, and also smaller ones have just been funded out of the general fund as transfers to our capital improvement program.
What would be an example of a smaller drainage project?
Well, we have, what do we have right now? We have like 300,000 for one that we're working on, David.
Well, I
A
think,
lot of times we'll just let it accumulate over there. You know, we'll fund like 300,000 a year out of the general fund until you have enough to do a small project that would be less than $1 million, you know, something in the 7 acres.
that's what, I think we might have used some of that money, a few years ago when we did that little drainage there on Old Orchard.
Oh, okay. I know what you're talking about.
I think we had 2 houses that were flooding.
Thank you.
So the stormwater utility can offer another revenue source to help us fund our existing programs. As I said, we're not recommending that. We can also do exploring the creek expansion, like we talked about with our new crew that's out there cleaning out stuff. We could do an expansion of that with this. We can improve drainage in flood-prone areas, improve the existing storm drainage system, construct new drainage systems. You can pay for public education out of this rate and the operations and maintenance of your stormwater system. So it's pretty specific to stormwater, but it can encompass almost everything within a stormwater system. We're allowed to do this by Texas Local Government Code Chapter 552. We have broached the topic with our city council numerous times going back to 1992. And our council has been kind of on the fence about it for several years. We did have direction from our council in 2011 to move forward with a rate analysis. We tried to schedule that at a 2012 retreat with our city council, and time constraints kind of made that impossible at the time. But in 2012, we did hire an outside consultant to help us determine an equitable rate for the city of Louisville. A little bit of background on our 16 survey cities that we normally use for all of our comparisons. All of them have the stormwater fee except for Carrollton. So we and Carrollton are the only two. And at least 55 cities in the state have a stormwater utility rate and charge a fee for the service. They operate much like our water sewer system. You have to analyze your cost and you develop a fee that will cover that cost. And it must be a separate fund.
Can I go back just to that retreat, when you guys discussed it back in 2012? Council actually directed us to implement the stormwater fee, so that was direction. We were still in the process at that point in time of the data cleanup necessary to administer that program, and really it's only within, I'd say, the last 6 months that we've completed that, because it's fairly complex in that, you know, a stormwater fee is billed on your water bill, and yet the property, the people who get the water bills are not always the property owners. And so there's a lot of matchup and cleanup related to that. And we had a group of employees along with a consultant that worked on that about a year and a half. So it is basically ready to go.
So the code, the municipal code does describe to us how we can fund it and what kind of fees can be assessed. It requires 2 public hearings. So one, we need to adopt an ordinance, and the second one, we need to adopt the fees. And it must remain in existence for at least 5 years once we adopt one. That's all according to state law. You may charge on any basis other than the value of the property, but it must be directly related to drainage and must be non-discriminatory, equitable, and reasonable. So that tells us, you know, we can't just say, oh, we want to charge $3, do it. We have to have a basis that's rational and reasonable to charge the fee. It must be based on an inventory of the lots and tracts in the city. And you can bill stormwater drainage charges with other public utility billings, as Donna was saying, that we would do it in relation to our water bills here in the city. And these can be used to pay for debt. So as we talked before, we could do an all-cash type approach to tackling some of these drainage projects, or we could do a combination of both, or we could issue debt. So depending on, as we go along, kind of the priorities of what you want to get done when will probably determine cash versus debt.
I have a question. In the matching, you were saying trying to find, should you charge in the water bill the renter or the owner? Which one would you prefer the responsibility following, the owner or the renter?
Normally, we would prefer the owner, but right now it's whoever's paying the water bill.
Okay,
Because that's who you have basically you're looking for a hammer. So
okay,
that if you don't pay it, I can turn off your water.
right, okay.
So you're
okay.
looking for that combination of attaching it to the address where the services are getting paid, so
Okay.
that whoever's paying those will pay it, but.
Okay,
And that's basically how every city that we look at in Metroplex, that's how they do it.
okay.
The municipal code does say that state-owned property is exempt, of course. Property in natural state is exempt because they aren't creating any impervious surface. And then property with wholly sufficient and privately owned drainage systems are exempt. So right off the bat, we don't even mess with them, they're exempt. We go down the road. What may be exempt are counties, cities, and school districts, or religious organizations. And when we did meet with our city council, as Donna was saying at our council retreat, they indicated that no optional entities would be exempt from the stormwater fee. So the city would pay it, school districts will pay it, churches will pay it. They don't want to get into the exempt business at this point.
Gina, I believe that was consistent with how most of the cities do that. So we especially look at those cities in LIs too.
And they're already paying it for other cities. All cities base their rate on impervious area and set a common residential charge called an equivalent residential unit. So you'll see that ERU designation throughout this presentation today. It's a standard measure for stormwater utilities used on a national basis, and it's used almost entirely here in Texas. All cities, as Donna just mentioned again, did use it through the utility billing system, which does provide a hammer for failure to pay. Our preliminary Louisville ERU is 2,800 square feet, and that was based on our consultant study of all of our DCAD properties in the city. It's 2,400 square feet of an actual building, and then 400 square feet of driveway, like sidewalks, extra sheds, things like that in people's backyards. Impervious area is the surface that has been compacted or covered with a layer of material so that it's resistant to ground infiltration by water. And this gets a little bit more tricky as you go in and start looking at your flyover data on what's really considered compacted when you look at gravel places or really tightly dirt that's been packed down and is like concrete at this point. You know, you have to really go in and look at it in person on the field. We've had a lot of staff spend a lot of time out there going and saying, does that look like gravel? Is it concrete? What is it? And making a determination on whether or not it's impervious. So you can't just look at a picture and decide that. You've kind of got to go out there and make sure you understand what's on the ground. Our city survey, 6 cities had a single monthly flat rate and 9 had a tiered monthly rate. The tiers seem to be more appropriate when housing stock is more diversified, and I'll show you a couple of slides here in a second of how that plays out. All cities charge of commercial properties based on a defined equivalent residential unit, which achieves an equitable rate structure. So the commercial is based on what we find for the residential, and that makes it more consistent throughout the city. So here is an example of an ERU. Our residential parcels are actually our single-family townhomes, duplexes, quadruplexes, things like that, quadplexes. The fee would be a flat rate per equivalent residential unit per month based on a schedule. In our case, we are recommending a $4. That could change to a $5. It could, right now, we're recommending a $4 based on the average of the survey cities, what we found when we were out looking at all of the other surveys. Council did have an indication that they may want to go as high as 5 at one point, so that is still, can be played with a little bit. The non-residential parcels, including commercial, industrial, governmental apartments, homeowners associations, that would be allocated a portion of their impervious area on the property in square feet divided by that equivalent residential unit, which was 2,800 square feet. So in this case, if you had a 28,000 square foot building,
Let me see.
you would get 10 ERUs times 4, which would give you $40 per month.
I wondered why you divide by ERU and then multiply by ERU. It's the ERU rate.
Yeah.
There's that, those spaces shouldn't be in there.
Right, it shouldn't be, and I tried to get that out and it wouldn't do it at the last
Okay.
minute, so yeah. It's by the ERU rate. So this was our 16 city survey results. You can see where they range from Carrollton with 0 all the way up to Fort Worth at $8.10.
395 is an odd rate. 777 is an odd rate.
Yeah, and some of these can be, if they had a tiered system, we pick the average, so that may be why you're getting some weird numbers.
Up there, $1.
Yeah.
That doesn't look like much analysis to me.
Yeah, it doesn't to me either.
$1 generates some money.
Yeah.
The consultant we hired actually took a look at all the other cities in Texas when we were looking at the rates and did this chart for us, which showed the average fee as $4.69. And again, they go from $1 down up to $14 a month, so.
Love it.
Lubbock.
I think they were doing a study, weren't they, Gina, last year, and that may have changed since we,
Yeah, and I know a couple of these have updated since then.
they had some challenges to the program and their ranks, I don't remember all the ins and outs on that.
So Palmer Price was the consultant that we used, and they've been involved in implementing 19 of these rates in different Texas cities. They're all based on the ERU. For purposes of the rate calculation, our 2,400 square foot ERU did not include mobile homes or duplexes or townhomes. They're primarily single-family homes is what we were trying to get to. And again, the Louisville ERU is 2,800, which was 2,400 square foot of a building and an allocation for sidewalks, patios, and driveways to bring it up to 2,800. You can see this chart is kind of where we were talking about not having a real high amount of diversified stock. You can see how the bell curve goes up here, and you kind of a mid-range here is your 2,400. That's kind of where we get that from. It ranges from 600 all the way up to 14,000. Looks like somebody's around 13,000 here in the city has a big house. But primarily, you're between 1,000 and 3,800, with your average being 2,400 square feet in the city. A nice, pretty bell curve. So that's why Palmer Price recommended just the one flat fee for our residential rather than a tiered system. There are a large number of mobile homes in the smaller tier, and there's also not a wide distribution of any other size. You know, you don't have a whole section of houses that are 3,500 square feet with a great number of those. It's pretty well lined out. This is Round Rocks, which you can see they're pretty much like us. You see the bell curve there, and they're kind of right at 2,900. So they have a larger ERU than we do, but you can see it follows the same path, and they have a flat fee as well. Addison, though, you can see how they don't have as much of a kind of pretty curve that you can kind of say one tier is more effective throughout their city. They really have several tiers where they've got some smaller homes, a lot of medium ones, and then they have two groups of fairly large homes with several homes in those tiers. So it makes more sense if you have kind of a setup like this in your city to charge a tiered rate so that you're really kind of getting who's paying what as their square footage increases. So the blue ribbon data sheets that we distributed last meeting to you on drainage totaled a little over 72 million. A $4 rate here, which we would start at $4, and the recommendation was to increase that rate by 25 cents every year. So next year it'd be $4.25, the next year $4.50, and so on. At the end of 2 years, you would have 29.971 million. So really, because we're looking at a 10-year time frame for everything else related to our GEO program, that's kind of what you want to look at in terms of what you have to spend for this. So of that 72 million, we're looking at about 30 million as being approximately what you'd spend if it was cash. A little bit more if we do a cash debt combination. Of course, the cash versus credit is based on several factors, and I know that Brenda Martin went over these with you a little bit when we were talking about GEO debt versus cash, inflation rate versus borrowing rate. the timing of when you needed projects. So if you want to make a splash and go out there and do all of these in the first couple of years, you want to issue debt so that you'll have all that cash up front. If you want to slow and steady and keep a project every year, then maybe we can do cash. So it's really going to be kind of up to what we see as a timed schedule.
Jim, can you go back to slide 22, the previous one?
This
I
one?
just want to clarify that, yeah, so $4 and then 25 cents each year or 10 years, so
So it would be $4 and $4.25 and $4.50.
so that will be up to 8,
$6.25, I think, and
is this 25? Okay.
yeah.
Is this something the city council can, I'm sorry, were you finished?
No, yeah. no.
Okay. Is this something the city council could have just voted on, or is it required that the
They
residents
will
have to?
eventually vote on it, but it requires public hearings before they can
Okay.
vote on it.
But does the public have to accept it, like vote to
No.
approve it? No, okay.
And when we talk about debt that's sold against the stormwater fee, those would be certificates of obligation and also not voted on.
Okay. So this can go right away? This can go in right away?
There's an implementation process that Gina will talk about.
Okay.
And I'll show you some of the impacts too on some of the businesses, and it's one of those things that I think you want to kind of slowly introduce to a city and kind of hear what people have to say about it and implement it over time so that you have a chance to listen to everybody's concerns about it and address some of those concerns, because it can have an impact on some of our commercial properties in particular.
Okay.
Sorry to come back to this, but one other question, what other options did you guys explore in terms of just, right now it's $0, right? So now it's gonna be a $4 hit. Could you start lower and then build up higher at the tail end of it? That would still level it off at 29 million?
Yeah,
So-
we could do that, yeah,
Just a thought, okay.
yeah.
You could start as low as Capel or lower.
And then
We just
increase
wanna,
it.
yeah, we just wanted to have a basis, that's irrational and reasonable, a $4, bringing in 2.5 million approximately the first year can equate to several projects getting off the floor. If you make it too low, you're really not gonna get anything for a couple of years, and you still have the implementation paying for not a lot of rewards, so. But yeah, they definitely can be structured a number of ways. This one we showed you last time we talked about financing. If you'll recall, we talked about, well, why don't we just increase taxes? Instead of doing a separate fee, why don't we just increase taxes? This one shows you that a $4 fee, this was in 2013, so it was last year, would bring in $2.3 million. And then every year it'll go up depending on what the rate is and, kind of how your stock is developed. If you still want to bring in that same amount of money through your taxes, you're going to have to levy this amount of tax rate in order to get that. And if you levy that, this is what a typical single family is going to pay. So at $4 on a stormwater fee, they would pay $48, but to get that same amount of money on your property tax rate, they're going to pay $53. So really, you're just looking at, you're going to end up paying a little bit more if you do it through your property tax than we would as a separate fee.
Do you know, with the others, 16 cities that you guys surveyed, do you know what their increases are per year?
I don't know that all of them have an increase per year. Some of them have a $4 that stays $4 forever, and some of them have an increasing, so it varies.
Okay.
But we could see if we could get a listing of that for you.
Just for those 16
Yeah.
cities. Thank you.
We wanted to give you some examples of who would pay what if we actually started charging this fiscal year. And just a typical gas station here, the stormwater fee would be $63 a month. And we've also given you what they currently pay in their utility fees, their water bill is $578 a month. So you can see that 63, although it's a lot, compared to their water, it's not crazy. $578 compared to 63 is okay. So a couple of the apartment complexes, a bigger one versus a smaller one. Stormwater fee here would be $536 a month. Right now they're paying $10,000 a month in water bills. The smaller one would be $261 a month. Right now they're paying $10,000 as well. Our LISD, the bus barn, this one it's almost entirely concrete. It's all parking lot and building. So their stormwater fee is pretty equivalent to what they're paying in their utility bills right now. Dale Jackson Career Center would be about half what they're paying in their water bill. Parkway Elementary is again about half of their water bill, $300. Hedrick Middle School would be $577 compared to a water bill of $882. But these are the reasons why we kind of would want to make sure we have plenty of input and notice. You don't want to just start charging people $800 extra a month without them kind of being ready for it and budgeting for it, even a homeowner. But these commercial properties definitely have a little bit higher. The post office would be $264 compared to a water of $245. A Holiday Inn over there on Vista Ridge Mall would be $86, and their water bill is $1,400.
And this is in addition to them still paying the fees for the water and
Right.
sewer. This will be on top of that.
Right.
Now, do you work from
You
home?
have to think about this as a separate utility.
A home is $4 a month
Oh,
for every home.
oh,
Somebody had
okay.
to make me-
I'm sorry.
Now, does this in any way encourage people to break up some of this concrete and change?
Go to glass.
It certainly could. I don't know that we've seen that in other cities. I don't think I've heard of that, but definitely, you know, if it was your lot and you weren't using that concrete, why not?
I'm just thinking, the little islands of grass and trees could lower your cost.
Yeah.
It could, I mean, some of what's, that's driven by parking requirements and things like that. But certainly, yeah, it could.
I have a question. I know the stormwater fee can be kind of controversial from a developer standpoint because the city requires certain parking requirements and they're saying, okay, well, you're making me put in all this parking and then you're gonna make me pay for it. Is there, could they implement some sort of green infrastructure or something in their parking lots to lessen that if they wanted to? Or is this something that you have to pay it, there's no way around it?
Could you have some type of credit that would encourage some type of
Yeah, like if you wanted to
green-
put in like a parking lot that, I used to work in a green building that had a parking lot that was all pavers, and it had a underground,
Collection system of some sort.
yeah, and so it was kind of, the whole parking lot was completely pervious.
You could certainly explore things like that, and I'm not, Carol, are you familiar with any of the
That would
cities do
be-
anything like that?
None in this area. I think there's others, in some other states they do. But I went to one of the conferences where they actually had a demonstration of the impervious, those type paved stones. It actually has an underdrain system. And they applied for a credit, and they had to, from an engineering standpoint, verify that it would, or prove that it would actually displace the water and that it would actually go in the ground, it wouldn't run off. And that's the choice of the city, I would guess, to do a credit type program.
But certainly that would be a possibility. When you
Okay.
look at the 2025 plan and the whole focus on sustainability,
So I'm just moving forward from that, so there is a possibility that we wouldn't be able to, I'm assuming the amount for this fee is assuming, was there an inventory done of how much impervious surface there is in the city?
Yeah, and we have some assumptions I'll show you in a second about how many credits we might foresee
Okay.
giving and things like
I
that.
was just wondering if we were gonna get into that, would it lower that possible amount of money that we had
Yeah.
to deal with?
absolutely.
Yeah. And we
So-
took some of that into account in developing this 2.4 million that you see annually. So I'll show you a chart in that in just a
Okay.
sec.
So this won't drive businesses away, really.
No.
It hasn't, I mean, everyone, like we said, all of our survey cities have it except for Carrollton, and so I think most of them, especially corporate ones that are in other cities, are used to paying it already.
Oh, okay.
CVS Pharmacy would be $87, their water bill $70, and then McDonald's would be $54, and their water is $683. Huffines Auto, that one's another huge one. A monthly stormwater fee of almost $1,000 is something you want to give people notice about and an opportunity
lot
to
of
talk
parking
about.
lots,
Yeah, it's all, cars and parking lots.
It's a lot
so.
of impact when you think about it, if you put that into perspective. It's a lot of runoff.
See, and that concerns me, because seeing an additional almost $1,000, that's what I'm saying, I mean, would they, because they have other locations where, Huffines and, there are other
They
locations.
have one in Denton that they're paying for right
They're
now.
paying for it right now, oh, okay, okay.
But some of the businesses may look as they revise their footprint, especially with IH-35, that rather than having such a large parking lot, maybe they do multi-tiered parking lots on, and so I don't know if you've seen any dealerships that sometimes have 3 or 4 levels of vehicles.
Yeah, their footprint's smaller
Yeah.
then, so you
So
don't
they have
have
like a
as
parking
much.
garage for their sales, that's their sales floor.
Yeah.
So you'll see them in Austin on IH-35 in the motor mile. There's some dealerships that are 3 stories or 4 stories of vehicles. So their footprint and their impact is
It's
less.
gonna be smaller. So I'm wondering how many businesses, when they get ready to come in, and like you had mentioned, or someone said about the required parking spaces, are we gonna have an influx of people coming to council asking for variances, so as not to have to put as many parking spaces into?
Well, they could, but they would have to justify that variance. So that variance would they have to demonstrate that they've created some type of retention for that water to stay on that property, that it's not, because the whole reason this is happening is all is because to deal with drainage, right? So we won't have that drainage because that water will stay on that property for the most part, because it will be retained in a pond. I think in the 2025 plan, I know in some of the other presentations I've seen talking about new development where we're seeing now in some communities, developers will come in and rather than build a retention pond at the end of a development, they'll build a retention pond underneath a parking lot. So they have systems now that you can build it because it'll be far enough down, and the parking lot will be strong enough to handle heavy traffic going over it, 18-wheelers and all that. And so the retention pond isn't seen as overtly as we typically see. If you go to some large footprinted retail spaces or commercial spaces, you'll see a big retention pond. They won't exist anymore because they'll be under the parking lot. So there's all types of ways, but at the end of the day, they would have to make their case of why they want that variance and why they should receive it.
And either it would go through a variance or it would be a credit to the stormwater rate itself, so either way. And again, just the residential rate would be a flat $4 rate, so this was just a comparison of schools and, businesses, but for residents, it's all $4 regardless. So who would actually pay the stormwater fees in Louisville? The residential flat fee would make up 28% of the revenue that we get, and the non-residential fee, which would be your commercial, multifamily, churches, ISD, city and county, would make up the other 72%.
We don't have this page in our packet?
Yeah.
We do?
You just said it.
I gotta look to the back.
It should be after all those. Should be back further
It should
than
be,
that.
yeah.
Do you not have it? Are you done?
I'm done.
Separate after the Huffines
I
slide.
just have this in the.
Here, I don't know what you have for, those are the rest of them.
Everybody else? We did that to Ray on purpose.
Yeah.
Make sure you're all looking
That's
at
okay.
Make sure I was paying attention.
Yeah.
It happened to me about 2 weeks ago too, so.
We rotated some.
Yeah, rotated.
See who's awake.
Back to Kristen's point, the ordinance could include possible credits for stormwater best management practices. By code, they need to be either related to quantity or quality improvements and can be up to 50% of the rate. So it could be fairly significant if you're looking at somebody who's paying $1,000 a month, and if they decide to put in something that makes them wholly operational, then they could be as low as $500 a month. So there are possibilities for those type of credits, and we do have an ordinance written right now that includes those kind of credits based on our COG, our North Central Texas Council of Government Standards on Best Management Practices. So the assumptions also to the revenue estimate, we assume that we would be given maybe 10% reduction to credits for best management practices. That's a WAG can I say that? Yeah. That's based,
Okay, I understand.
it's based on our consultant's recommendation and kind of what she's seen in other cities. We don't know what Louisville's gonna do, how many people are gonna come in and decide to ask for a credit and try to prove to us that they are meeting the requirements for that, so that's what we've included right now. A 5% reduction also to database errors, and that again goes to Donna's point of how difficult it has been to match these softwares with DCAD and with cog flyovers and with property owners. It's just been, you wouldn't even realize. So we put in a reduction here of 5% for people coming in later going, wait, that's not what it shows, or this line should be here, or that line should be somewhere else. So 5% reduction due to write-offs because some people will not pay, and that's gonna happen. A 5% reduction due to vacancies, because if there is a vacancy in that property and nobody's there, who's gonna pay that? And that's something we've gotta kind of work through and still see how that will work once we implement that fee. And then we'll have a reduction due to billing data adjustments, you know, just again, depending on if there was an error with how we calculated it or with the amount of impervious surface, if they come in and try and tell us it should be different, and we go back to adjust it, things like that.
We shouldn't have the issues with the will not pays if you guys are going to.
Cut off the water.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. You might still have some, just depending on if it's vacant right now and they have a bill outstanding, you know, then they're not gonna pay because they don't care if we shut off their water.
So wouldn't that really be absorbed? We should do more so like 10%, absorb that 5% of
Yeah,
write-off
it
if you're
could
gonna
be.
tie it into the water bill.
It could be. It's, all of these are kind of based on standard, kind of what other cities have seen, and until we kind of become operational, we're not gonna know. But for purposes of just trying to get a revenue estimate, we didn't wanna say, oh, 100%, you know, let's go for it all, so.
And that
These-
reduction would also like be someone who comes in and says, okay, I see you're gonna charge me for this, so I'm going to knock out half my driveway now and take it back to grass or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
So, okay, that's what I was thinking.
I was gonna ask, if vacant homes, and like you said, you can't, because there's no water to shut off, is it possible that you can assess the fee on their taxes, or no? Like on a tax bill?
No.
No?
But to piggyback off what Karen the question she just asked about, now, were you speaking in reference to a homeowner?
A homeowner who's charged and he says, you know, he's got a triple wide driveway and he decides he's not gonna wanna pay that much,
He just
takes it down to double wide
Oh, okay.
and turns that into grass or trees or bushes or whatever. He's
Then
reduced
we
his
could go back
space.
out and check his impervious surface and decide, yeah, he doesn't need to pay as much as, well, a homeowner
But
would
I
be
know-
$4.
Yeah, but I know
Yeah.
there's
A homeowner would be
Well, that's,
$4.
well, that's saying apartment
Yeah,
complex.
an apartment.
Oh, okay.
Any kind of, you're right,
Okay,
any kind
because-
of business or anything would be that case, but a homeowner would be.
Because I'm just thinking, even with the homeowner, there is an ordinance that you
People
have to
think they have a lot
have
of
some part of a
sidewalks.
driveway anyway. so
Yeah,
you
and
could-
it just
I mean,
doesn't
you could
matter
bust that.
because it's gonna be $4 for everyone
anyway.
regardless of your
Okay,
impervious
that's
surface
true.
area, so regardless of what you did or didn't do to it, you're still gonna be charged $4, so.
And you're talking about apartments, so most of that's not optional because they have to have a certain amount of
Yeah.
parking. But they could not have a tennis court, not have a basketball court.
Swimming pool?
And clay courts.
Those are amenities that bring people
Yeah.
to their complex.
Yeah.
You start getting rid of
I
those
would hope you
amenities.
would.
Yeah, you would think they would be more likely to implement some kind of drainage system and try and get a credit versus if they were really concerned about the fee.
Or they could pass some of the costs off to the
Well, they want to
tenants.
anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're gonna do it anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
And same thing same thing with developers. I mean,
Yeah.
when
Everybody.
they develop it, it's gonna be whoever's the end user, whoever ultimately purchases that development, whoever rents or leases that part of that development, they're the ones who are gonna.
And I'll pass mine off to my daughter.
And then they'll pass it off to their clients when they come to their business.
Yeah, it gives new meaning to it.
So
Always get it in the end.
Ours would be a little bit more expensive.
So the calendar I've put on here is just a possible timeframe. After council direction would be received, what we would think it'd be at some point, if you decide you would do a recommendation to council saying, yes, we want to implement this, and here's kind of the timeframe we think. Again, they've already given us direction to do it, so I think they would like to hear from you, and if you so think that that's a valuable tool to have right now in our GO bond process as well to fund drainage projects, it's a good timing to put it all in one conversation with our city council. We would have the GO bond election in November of 2015. And then we also have May city council elections. And as you know, if you were running for council, you might not want to be running at the same time a stormwater fee was being implemented. So what you're trying to avoid is, a November bond election, which is asking for, perhaps asking for an increase in your taxes. We don't know yet what we're going to recommend. So we kind of want to focus on that between now and November, the GO bond election. Then we probably want to not have anything else hit until after the May election for our city council. So that would put us into June of 2016. And the first thing would be that the city council would create what they call a finding, that stormwater utility charges will be made against all real property, and that the city will provide the drainage service for all real property. And that's just the standard legal term we have to do. In July and August, we would advertise public hearings and at least 3 times in the newspaper before the date of public hearings. We could have additional public hearings, but by law we have to have 2. In September, we would hold public hearings. We would pass the ordinance establishing the utility and a separate ordinance establishing the fee. And then we could enact the fee in October of 2016. So that's kind of an option for your ordinance, for your stormwater utility implementation. It can be very much more complex than this because you want to have a lot of public input. And I think Jennifer included an article that Donna had found on kind of pitfalls of stormwater implementation that was pretty interesting. So we wanted to include that just for y'all to have, kind of talks about public input and kind of making sure you have a reasonable rate and all the database things we've gone through, and so that might be good for you to know. We also just had one where the city of Richardson passed their drainage fee, and one of the comments that they had were that they were surprised how smoothly it went on the public side. So we've heard some stories where it's been kind of difficult in cities, and then others where it kind of wasn't a major deal. So, I would think we want to be prepared for education and to make sure that we convey why we're doing it, what projects we're going to be able to fund, and kind of focus on the additional drainage improvements, as well as expanding the exploring the creek kind of concept, where we're talking about expanding that green space by doing a lot of these creek cleanups. Everyone in the city benefits because you have that additional trails and just the views and the nice clean look of the city. So things like that are also important to consider. So there's a lot for stormwater fee implementation, but that's kind of it in a nutshell. So I don't know if y'all have any more questions.
If you think about it, what Gina said earlier was that you have over $70 million worth of drainage projects in your program that David and David actually went over. So a question here becomes, what do you want to achieve with stormwater? The council said go forward with stormwater. So are you going to recommend it? We would look to the committee to talk about cash versus debt. You'll see a lot of discussion about debt in the next few months as the legislative session starts. There's a real anti-debt. I'm just going to prepare the committee. There's a real anti-debt movement out there that debt is bad. My personal opinion is a mix is nice, but if you didn't sell any debt, your streets would fall apart. If you're it's kind of like when you buy a house. Not many of us have enough money just to go and buy that house and save your money until you can afford to pay cash, right? So it's the same concept with the city. You want to regularly invest in your infrastructure, and to do that on a cash-only basis, I don't really think is feasible. It would not be my recommendation to you or the committee. And so the question with stormwater would be, do you want to, I'm not telling you couldn't recommend, it kind of depends when you look at the drainage projects. Do you want to do more? You can recommend that some of the drainage projects be done through GO bonds. We've used GO bonds in the past to do our drainage projects. So you could do a mix. You could have some of it as part of your GO bond package. You could have some of it through debt, COs, through your stormwater, and cash. So when we start getting to that point where we've gone through all of the different projects, those are the type of conversations that we really need to have with you guys. So what we've tried to do is go through and show you various funding sources for the different types of capital projects. That makes sense? So what we have left to talk about, I wanted to talk briefly about where are we and what's left. So you guys have just been so efficient. It's been really amazing. Y'all, we've moved more quickly than I thought we might be able to because we're talking about a lot of pretty complicated issues. We've gone through all the street projects. You have your total list. We've gone through all your drainage projects. What we will start after the holidays will be a review of your trails and your park type projects. And what you'll see, what I want to start with, some of you I think saw this when we did the Vision 2025, the committees. You saw the Trail Master Plan and the Park Master Plan, but we want to go back and touch on those again. We're going to have half associate representative here the first meeting in January to talk about that. And then you're going to see the staff recommendations. So obviously, the Park Master Plan and the Trail Master Plan is the cost of millions. So what Bob and his staff did, along with the park board, was to try to look at what we wanted to try to accomplish over the next 10 years. And so if you remember back to the conversations we had with James, and he talked about surveys, one thing for the committee to consider is what will the public support through a bond election? If you remember, they're very supportive of streets. They're going to tend to vote yes, related to streets, and to an extent the same for trails. But a rec center, maybe not so much support. And the park board, I think, has done an awfully good job of looking at those issues also. And one thing we'll talk to you about is a package that they looked at 2 years ago. Yeah, where they actually have a recommendation, a prioritization of park projects and funding sources. So we'll bring that back to you too. Gina mentioned to you other opportunities to extend the green. That can be through what we just talked about, the drainage program, but it could be through land purchases also. So we'll want to talk a little bit more about that opportunity and those options. The other item that we'll want to talk to the board about is public art. If you look at some cities, they have specified programs that talk about a certain percentage of dollars being spent on the development of public art. In your backups, you've got information from the Denton bond election that was just held back in November. And every one of those items, they had a street programs, and they had park project programs and facility programs. And for each one of those, they had a dollar amount recommended for public art. We have never done that in Louisville. And so what I want to do is talk to you about whether or not the committee would be interested in recommending that to the council. So we're doing some more research. When I looked at Denton's, it looked like about 2% of every one of those programs, those categories, they had for public art. So we found a statute that looked like there was a limit on that at 1%, and so we're still working through that. But sometime after the first of the year, we're going to want to talk to the committee about whether that might be of interest.
So if we would have had that in place, then we could have actually purchased the Western guy, the
Slicker Shine?
Yeah, Slicker Shine. We could have had money to keep him here and
could
purchase
have.
him.
The way it works in a lot of cities, let's say you approved a new animal shelter as part of your bond program, then a percentage of that project is dedicated to public art, so there's usually an art piece that's designed to go along with that facility. So if we had had it at the time City Hall was built, then you would have had a dollar amount dedicated to public art for this facility. We've never had that program before.
Cause I know a lot of people were upset that he was gone, cause I mean, he was like a historical statue here, cause people would come down here taking their pictures
Oh,
here
absolutely, I
with
can
it,
look
and-
right out my window and see it every day.
So-
Yeah, it was a real loss, and so,
And-
that's why we're bringing it to you, different ways to look at, funding. Hello, Amanda. Okay, we're gonna start over now.
I was just gonna say, though, there was someone at our Rotary meeting this morning that I thought would have known that Slicker Shy was gone, but she said she was amazed that, she said she didn't realize.
Is that
Slicker-
Mary?
No,
No.
Angie Cox.
Oh, really? Well, I was talking to Mary at the Household Hazardous Waste
Uh-huh.
Program, and she's telling somebody to go have their picture made in front of Slicker Shine. I go, oh, no.
Too late.
Don't go have your picture made in front of
But
Slicker
Angel
Shine.
wouldn't know, because she doesn't live in Louisville anyway, so that's probably why
But
she
she's,
didn't know.
she's on the school board and she gets around all over here, so I mean, I was just surprised that she didn't.
Well, sometimes I think you're so used to seeing it there that you
You
don't.
don't
Yeah,
You
yeah,
don't
you don't
see
see
it
it
even
even
though
though it's not
and see that
seen,
it's
it's
gone,
Yeah.
but yeah. So that's an opportunity to perhaps avoid that from happening in the future.
Yeah.
Then we will turn our attention to facility request. Each one of the departments steps back and they look at their staffing levels in relation to the facility they're in. If you look at the fire department, they're gonna look at different fire locations that might be necessary, and they're gonna recommend or have recommended facilities. So we have a list of facilities for you guys to look at and consider. For an example, the basement of this building, I don't know if you all know, there's a basement here, and it's totally empty. It's never been finished out. We've been talking about the finish out for a number of years, and it's to the point where we're gonna recommend that we need to move forward to that. We started out, when did we do that presentation? 4 years ago, 5 years ago? And it was about $1 million. It's around 4 million now to finish it out. So we'll wanna go through those presentations.
It could be used for
What
office
will it be?
space.
Oh, office space?
It'll probably be better, we'll save it for the day we talk about
We'll talk about it,
facilities,
okay.
because one use of the basement would be for emergency management, under EOC.
Okay.
But we wanna talk to you about that in more detail when we get to facilities.
Okay.
I know there's been some discussion on the part of the committee members about, what is your role? The staff has gone through and we've looked at prioritization in the different categories. It's your job to really pick apart that prioritization. You may have some issues that you disagree with us. But the biggest task is to take all the different categories and make a recommendation to the council about the total package. How much of that needs to be spent on streets? How much of that needs to be spent on facilities? How much should be spent on trails? That's gonna be a major issue that the council's gonna wanna hear from you on. What do you think as residents of the city of Louisville that is best for your community? And options for the council. So you could look at a flat rate. And that's what we have done historically. We've gone to the voters and we've said, if you pass this bond program, it's not gonna affect your tax rate. Denton just passed a program back in November that has a 3-cent tax rate. And their tax rate, ours is 43 and theirs is 64 already. Significantly higher. We have one of the lowest tax rates in the Metroplex. So council's gonna wanna hear from you on what you think the best program would be. So we actually, this fiscal year, lowered our tax rate. It was 44 cents and had been 44 cents for a number of years. And we dropped it, and you could just, that could be a selling point. You just dropped it this year, you can take it back up to what it was. And that generates 307, is that number, Gina?
Mhm.
307,000 additional dollars. Or you can look at increasing the debt rate. You could take a package to council that said, we recommend that you might consider first, option 1 is a flat rate, but if you were to look at an increase, here's the additional programs that we would recommend that you take to the voters. So those are the type of things that we would be looking for, and we'll be discussing as we get to the end of this process. Stormwater, a rate recommendation. We did everything on $4. I mean, I heard a question earlier, could it be lower? Yes, it could. So, what do you think, it's gonna be on, as residents of Louisville, this is gonna be on your water bill. So, what is acceptable? And then again, it gets back to the drainage projects and how many of those drainage projects you feel you wanna see move forward as part of either GEO bond program or to stay in stormwater. It's another decision point. And then HOT, that's the hotel occupancy tax, and it does have, and Ray mentioned this the last time we talked about it, it has some really very specific limitations on what it can be spent on. Has to be pretty muchly spent on your convention center, CVB, it could be spent on that, so it's got some limitations. 15% can be spent on art, so there is a facility recommendation to have a music hall, an expansion of your arts center. So that could come out of some out of your hotel motive fund, but also out of your TIF fund, your Old Town TIF. So that's another decision point. And so in the end, though, once we get through all of this and discuss all the various projects and you decide those prioritizations, then we would be taking that recommendation to the council at the March retreat, March 19th through the 21st. And Blue Ribbon, we're going to recommend to have that on a Saturday, so we would certainly encourage all of you guys to be there to help present that package.
In what month again?
It would be in March 19th through the 21st. And we are back in Fort Worth for the first time in quite a few years, so.
But the,
Mark your calendars.
our part would only be on Saturday.
Just on Saturday.
Oh, we don't get the hotel stay or anything?
No, I'm sorry. We do have a limited budget. Remember, I told you we had one of the lowest tax rates. So I just wanted to give you an overview of really where we are with the overall Blue Ribbon process. And as you consider these type of options, I think one thing, and what was so important to us and the council, was those of you who've been so involved with 2025 be on this committee. So you're stepping back as you look at the needs that we've outlined for you. How does that fit in with furthering the Vision 2025 program? And then how can these programs be best structured to utilize resources? And so that's why we're talking to you more about just GEO bonds. We're going to talk to you about certificates of obligation, about stormwater, about 4B funding, and those other options. So questions? Issues?
There's something that, just a point of information, and not so much a question. Does anyone have a figure of all of the new housing starts that could happen in the next year even? Because I know with Josie, and there's several here in town that have suddenly popped back up. Does anyone have that figure? What are we talking about in possible new residences to our city?
Yeah, we absolutely have that. I did that analysis not long ago for just East Louisville, because all of the growth in East Louisville is tremendous. In fact, Chief Kerbo is looking at impacts in relation to our police officer staffing levels. So Austin Ranch alone, that undeveloped section of Austin Ranch, in the next 4 or 5 years, they're projecting to have 10,000 new residents in that area.
That, and then there's the one down by the mall, and then there's the one by Walmart, and there's,
Yes,
I'm trying to think, there's another one that I just saw recently. It's like, whoa.
There's a lot of infill projects all over the city right now.
We have a list of those that are already in the building process, you know, that have started some type of paperwork that we
Broken
use.
ground, but
Yeah, that we use for budgeting purposes on, you know, inspection fees and capital, so we can definitely get you that list of kind of we don't really count it till we start seeing activity on it, so
Yeah,
that would be the
moving dirt.
most,
I'm thinking
the most
places moving
immediate, you know,
We
but
can
then
bring
of
you
course we
everything
have.
we know today.
Because that, I mean, that affects some of our funding sources.
It does. It does.
And I'm sure staff took some of those projects into account when you're looking at what projected funding we're gonna have over the next 10 years.
Yeah.
Growth.
Yeah.
And how much Nebraska Furniture is going to have an impact on us, and Toyota is going to have an impact on us on the east side.
Absolutely, they will.
Both of those.
Now, Chris Bright is very happy about Nebraska being right next to him.
That's Colony though, right? Nebraska's in
No,
Colony?
it's actually the colony, yeah.
The Colony, okay.
yeah.
But the effects of what's
Yeah,
happening there.
people
Yeah.
And it's a,
living
He
there.
didn't have to give out
Because not everybody's gonna be able to
They got the
afford to live in
development.
Frisco.
Yeah,
That comes in,
Or
let's say
want to.
Toyota.
yeah.
There's going to be some people that are gonna float back into.
Into Castle Hills. I think they're.
Well, Castle Hills, Austin
It's Castle
Ranch.
Yeah, Castle Hills, Austin, yeah.
We're talking about some serious impact of people here, and, you know, they may not be, the businesses may not be with us, but the people that are going to come with those businesses could end up with us.
Yeah, yeah.
The number I've heard recently is there's 1,000 people, Steve and I were talking about it today, 1,000 people a day moving to Texas.
Wow.
1,000 people a day. And they're all coming to the metropolitan areas.
They're
Believe me,
getting
I'm
here
from
as
West
fast
Texas,
as they
nobody's
can.
moving out there. I'm sorry, Karen.
They're getting here as fast as they can.
They are, absolutely.
Not having an income tax is huge to some of these people.
Huge. We've got a great economy right now.
I think it's more than, when people are in other states and they're looking at Texas, they're not necessarily looking at tax rates or income tax. What they're looking at is there a job there for them?
There's their job,
That's right.
yes, exactly.
And, you know, if there's not a job where they're at, or they're not able to make it where they're at with the job that is there, they're looking to find some place that they can take care of their families and have a.
But when we moved down in 82, the choice was between here or Atlanta, Georgia. Half the people were going to be moved to Atlanta and half were going to be moved here. We chose here because we got a 4% raise. Because we didn't have to pay taxes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Have to pay an income
Makes a
tax.
difference.
That does make a difference.
Cost of living is probably less too.
No, I have a house in Atlanta.
No,
No, it's about the same.
they're pretty much.
Is it more than Atlanta?
No, it's, well, the property tax is what kind of, you know, driving, I mean, it's pretty much the same. Yeah.
I think what's gonna be important for me, as we go forward with this, is that, because we're looking at so much information and so many recommendations, rather to take a step back and rather than look at the detail. We'll look at the detail when we flesh out everything, but I think as we look at everything, to come back and look at just the big dollars, like this in drainage, this in streets, and the total staff recommendations. And then we can start digging a little deeper into what the priorities are for the committee, because it can be overwhelming to look at all those things and things that we've looked at, 9 weeks ago. And I think for me, it helps me to take a step back and then to walk into the forest and decide, which things you're not gonna be able to do.
Yeah.
And, because we should set some options for our council to be able to make a decision. I mean, we're 63 or 20 cents less on our tax rate than Denton. I'm not recommending that we match Denton, but certainly, and it's not, a lot of conversations that I've had with folks in the last year and a half that I've been here is that it's time for our community to reinvest back into itself. When I was involved with the 2025 plan, people kept saying, well, why can't we have that? And, in order to have that, it costs dollars to
That's
do.
money.
And if you're willing to, open your wallet to help make that community rebirth and rejuvenated and invest in what's happening, not just in Old Town, but throughout the community, in the thriving neighborhoods that we're talking about, and doing some innovative things to encourage homeowners to take more pride and invest back into their houses. We have to have some of those options on the table for our council to say, we represent the community, a real diverse group, and so council's gonna be looking for some leadership from us, and so that's a lot of conversations to have, and I'm sure, you know, we're not all gonna agree about what the priority is, but the good thing is we have more things that we agree on than what divides us, and I think what we all agree on that with this 10-year plan, it's an opportunity to invest in making this community better, not necessarily just for us, but for the generation that comes after us, to do things and continue the work that happened the last time we had a bond election. But I remember the first time I drove through Louisville, and Kelly Stokes, who has her law firm downstairs, and Gary Lewis, and said, this is what the vision of what, and they talked about Old Town, but we also drove through neighborhoods and talked about those things. And so we'll have to figure out how committed do we want to encourage folks to be investing back in how great we know this community is.
Like you, I've had people come to me and they say, well, you know, Louisville will never be able to do. Louisville will never be able to do. And it's like, yes, they will. How committed are you to making that happen?
That's right.
Or are you willing to pay for that?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, it would cost way too much. And it's like, well, you know, maybe somebody needs to put the pencil to the paper and find out what it would cost you to have what you want. Don't just stand around and say, no, we can't, we never will. It's time to start looking at what are those options.
The price is not going down. With the example
Exactly.
of the basement, instead of finishing out for $1 million in less than 5 years, it's $4 million. Yeah.
Yep.
And that's one of the biggest problems with cash funding.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Prices go up while you're saving your money.
Yeah.
That's right.
But it's finding that balance, and
Finding
that's
that
what our
balance.
job is to do, is to find that balance to get as much done as we can and
Well,
rely on our people.
What are you willing to bear to get what you want?
And at the same time, you don't want to chase anyone away. You just
Exactly.
say, you know, we got $1 extra tax. And everybody's like, what? We're on Dallas County. Where's Capel? What's going on, you know? So,
Well, and I think some people don't realize that we are relatively cheap.
We're,
Yeah,
no,
we're very.
we're not rather, we are at the
We are
bottom.
very.
You know, it's like, if you move to some of these other towns, you'd be paying a whole lot more
Yeah.
and maybe not getting as much.
My house, 2 miles up Denton Tap is 100,000 more, and the tax is 3,000 more. I know, cause I looked at the house, I was gonna buy it, and I literally crossed 121, turned, made a right on Highland, found the exact same house with a 3-car. That was 100,000 less, and the taxes was $3,000 less, just because it was in Denton County, not Dallas.
Oh, yeah.
So that, to me, right there, is a selling point. So at the same time, that's what I was saying, we don't wanna.
Don't wanna run people off.
No,
No,
don't
I
wanna
think
drive
that's
them.
really just gonna come down to, it's gonna come down to a public education exercise,
Exactly.
which is kind of the second phase of what we're gonna be doing here. But, you know, if people are opposed to what we're proposing, it's just because they don't have the facts and figures that we have. So, you know, we just need to be completely transparent, open and honest and say, hey, you know, if you're concerned about this, we'll lay it out for you and we'll discuss it. And, you know, I think that's another big job that this committee is gonna have too, is just to share. And this, for me personally, has been extremely educational, and I'm, you know, I come from I'm an engineer, I do infrastructure for a living, so I understand all of that, but the rest of the stuff is just how it gets funded. This is just fascinating to me. I'm learning so much, and so, you know, I'm just talking to my neighbors. The fire department came with Santa last week, and so,
We love Santa.
so I ended up just on my on the sidewalk talking to my neighbors, and I was telling them about what we're doing, and you know, just some of the things that we've talked about. And you know, when you start talking about that, people are interested. They want to know how their life is supported, you know, how things work here. So you know, I find a way to work it into my conversations with people, and I guess we have quite a bit of doing that ahead of us as well. But you know, I think it's just a public education exercise.
And
That's a good point, because if
I
you
think
remember.
she's exactly right, because we're going to have to, I think we're going to have to do it in much smaller groups. People don't come to 500 people, 500 people go to MCL Grand to hear this, they're not gonna show up.
Yeah.
They're
We're
gonna
going to
do
have to do it in our
it
neighborhoods.
in their living rooms
Uh-huh.
and in groups, organizational groups, small organizational groups. One thing I'll, it's all about quality of life, right? And it's funny you mentioned Santa because, there's some communities that are near us that people may think are more influenced, but they don't have that quality of life, a little touch of Santa on a fire truck driving through their communities. And I've heard mentioned in the last week, how fortunate residents in Louisville are that they have, our fire trucks driving around, and Santa chose to go through Louisville, and not in some other communities that people think are more affluent, And that's important too, because, my 8-year-old kid doesn't care about all the tax rate and all that. They're, what's his quality of life? Did Santa drive by his house? Or?
Well, this is a different side of the coin for me about, I think my last CDBG meeting, we had a lady who, I think she's with the organization that deals with the Chin population. And she came and she spoke, and she wanted us to know, I was still trying to figure out, how, or what she was looking for us to do about the situation. But she said her purpose for coming to our meeting was to voice her concern about, I think it's Village West, the apartments that are under new management, and they've gone in and they're updating and adding all these nice great amenities, and they have like double the rent just like that. And so she was concerned about the Chin population that's living in those apartments and not being able to afford the new higher, rent that's, is going up on them instantaneously like that. And so I was explaining to her, I was like, well, and I told her a little about what the 2025 we're doing, we're trying to beautify our city. And she's like, well, I would think that the city would be more concerned about a growing population, that with all these beautification and all this and all that, everything's gonna go up. They can't afford to live here or, afford the rent. And then I was like, so what is it that you're looking, we can't control, what do you want us to do? We can't.
The market.
Exactly.
It is.
And that's what I was trying to explain to her, but in her mind, it was almost like can you go tell these apartments not to raise the rent because you guys have this growing, because she's saying this Chin population is growing.
And it is.
So if you guys are gonna have these high rent apartments, what are you guys going to do? She said, because they're going to be homeless because they're not, minimum wage is what, $8, $7, whatever it is, and, she's like, they're barely making it on minimum wage. And if the rent is going up on the apartments, A, you're gonna have a situation where you're gonna have homeless Chin people, or B, they're gonna be in housing code violation, too many people living in an apartment space and everything like that. So I don't know what to tell her, but that to me is how we're going to educate that part of our growing population, like she says, a growing population. Because she said in their eyes, they feel like they're going to be left out, that they're not wanted, and everything like that.
Yeah, that's not a decision for the city or for this body to make. That it's the market, and and you know what? If people can't get those high rents, then they'll sit empty and they'll lower them. But if they can get them, they're gonna try to maximize their investment. And that's what we do. If I decide to sell my house, I'm not gonna sell the house just to make, so, I have to think of my household income and all that stuff. So, and property owners and good for them, because some people have had to endure a lot of losses, especially in commercial property over the recession since 2009, and that they're trying to gain some of that lost investment is fantastic.
Well, I'm excited about the changes with those apartments, because hopefully it will find
so
its
much
way
more.
over to Basswood Manor, and,
so
they would catch on, maybe, hopefully. Fingers crossed.
Basswood Manor's another issue.
I know.
I know.
I was hoping that would trickle over to Basswood Manor. like that. But I sort of kind of felt bad because I asked her, I said, what is that you're looking for the city to do? We can't do anything. That's the new property owner that is going in and making these changes.
We'd have some problems if we tried that one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
it'd be a giant overstep.
I think that's just evidence that no matter what you do, there's always
Yeah.
going to be
Yeah.
someone upset, so
It's
there's
finding that
going to
balance.
be, there's going to be
Yeah.
people that are not happy with the recommendations that we make, and we're just gonna have to be okay with that. Just knowing that we're trying to meet the best interest of the majority. There are gonna be, on P and Z, there are people that will come in and say, well, this business wants to expand and they're doing all these great things and, they're gonna bring jobs in, but, there's somebody that lives a couple of doors down and they don't want it, and there's always gonna be that. There's always gonna be, somebody who has to pay a little bit of a higher price to, for the greater good.
And remember, the city's fairly limited. We can educate, we can help you with that whole process, but we can't publish anything that says vote yes. But we can, vote yes, we can't do that, that's a violation of state law.
I've been asked by my homeowners association that they wanna speak to you. They want you to come to our homeowners association
I can probably do that.
meeting. And so I told them I would ask, but I just like you, talking to neighbors, I was telling them about some of the things, and they was like, we need more code enforcement. I said, well, you know what? We got a bond committee going on. I said, and that's maybe one of the things they need to increase, code enforcement, is going around looking at properties or whatever. And they're like, well, we want to talk to the city manager. So that's what I was told. And so I know our
That
annual.
can probably be arranged.
Okay.
Send her an Evite, I'm sure she'll.
I said, maybe she'll send someone from her staff. I said, but I'll ask. So.
It'll be me or somebody from my staff.
Yeah.
So. Get over it, David.
Yeah.
So that's really what we had for you this evening, so we're glad to have the whole engineering team here, so we're glad to answer any questions you might have. Carol's here, she knows everything about stormwater program, our current.
I will add that the creek and drainage, the cleanup that we're doing now, we're a little bit ahead of the curve because we're in the process of renewing our stormwater permit, and in the new language of the general permit, that's going to be a requirement. It's called a storm sewer system operation and maintenance program. That's a requirement. We're already ahead of the curve on that. That being said, we can't just stop doing it because it's going to be a requirement. That and street sweeping is going to be a requirement. We're already doing that. So we're trying to get out there, but it ties to HHW, House of Hazardous Waste. We get stormwater credit for all of those programs, and you don't realize that till your time altogether. But it's all about keeping things out of the landfill and out of the creeks and streams. And you get trash in the creeks, water runs over that, then you get contamination. So it's the big picture, but it drills down real quick. So.
Well, and cleaning out as you are in the creeks is allowing that water to flow
Unrestricted and uncontaminated.
properly.
Yes.
And, getting those trees and bushes and things out of its way it's a really good thing. In fact, I've seen a couple places where some of the work's being done, and it's like it looks so much better.
That's the main thing. But
Besides the fact of what it's doing, the underlying cause isn't nearly as important to a homeowner as the look.
Yes, they're getting more benefit than they realize. It's the visual effect, but also it's a very important thing that we're doing, so. We can make them happy in the process, we like it.
Anybody else have any other questions, comments, concerns?
When's our next meeting?
January, it's coming to the 8th, but I can't remember the hour.
That sounds right.
First Thursday in January.
Yeah, the first of the first.
I do January
Okay, January 8th.
Yeah, because
The first Thursday in January, second Thursday in January.
it's the second Thursday, the first is the first.
Okay.
Mr. Monaghan's will be here to talk to you about parks.
No, let's say, what time will it be at? 6:30 or 6:30? 6:30.
6:30. Does anybody right now that's here know that they won't be here?
Convention that week, Consumer Electronics Show. So,
What city?
Consumer Electronics Show.
No, what city?
Oh.
Vegas.
I didn't even say, I'm trying to leave there early.
Come back.
That was amazing.
I've got a lot of meetings, I'm gonna try, I'm scheduled, I literally land at like 6 on Thursday. So,
The last time I went to Vegas for a convention, I worked harder than I ever have at a trade show. It was
it is
exhausting.
no joke, it's not fun.
Exhausting. It is. I never got to go do anything.
My
Is that the
schedule's
market?
packed from,
Trade show for what?
Consumer electronics.
yeah.
Oh, consumer electronics.
It's a big,
Big, huge,
Big clients.
huge.
big,
I know they
Very
have.
clean.
Wear comfortable shoes,
I go to the
always.
Dallas World Trade.
It's my 15th year ago.
Oh, awesome.
It's fun. But as of now, I won't, but I'm gonna try to either catch an earlier flight. But Bob knows I won't be here.
I will tell you, this committee's been great. I really appreciate your dedication. Been some long meetings, but we really appreciate it.
Donna, could we, is it possible that we can have some of these numbers in Excel? Like that one page where I show the 25 cents increase? I'm a real numbers guy. And if we've got that autonomy to kind of just play around with the numbers and take a look at it,
Yeah.
Sure, Gina can do that for you.
that'd be
You
great.
bet.
Yeah, so really anything going forward, if it's presented in like a table format and you have it in Excel, that'd be great, just so we can play around or all.
So you do it all and you send us all the spreadsheet? Cause I'm not a numbers woman.
Oh, I
Yeah, do it,
I
send it
do a
to
lot
me.
of sales forecasting
Oh,
and
yeah, okay.
number crunching
And
and,
it'd
you
be
know.
probably that we'd set up
Yeah,
something that
just
they
forward
can
me what
access and
you've
everything.
done and let me
He's
just
going to
work
play.
it.
I mean, if he's wanting to play with it, then he's gonna need to have access to the spreadsheet itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let us think about how the best way to get that to you, but we can do that.
I was gonna ask you the same thing, so thanks.
I promise I won't go after.
We would've told Bob no, but we'll tell him.
Also, well, I just want to thank y'all for the commitment you each of y'all have to this process, and I want to thank staff for being supportive and very open and transparent with our questions. I know we've asked a bunch of questions that sometimes aren't typical what somebody might think this body might ask, and so we've worked through those questions and had some great information, and so I'm glad that we're so far in the process. It'll help us on the other end when we start walking through the details and really have some tough conversations, because we can't do everything. And there are some probably other priorities, as you had conversations with neighbors that aren't even on any of the recommendations right now. I know I've talked to a few people that have asked for things that we're not even considering, bigger things. Just had a conversation today about Lake Park and really helping with the transportation thoroughfare through that area, and how that could help us economically. So there'll be a bunch of tough stuff to do. As you hopefully you are off from work at some point next week and have some time to refresh and unwind and have plenty of pecan pie. We'll see you all back here on the 8th, and I want to thank you for your service. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to.
Sorry, right, I have one more thing. So, as Anna mentioned, January 8th, Bob Monahan will be here from the park board. So Bob and I, being on the park board, there's a lot of great stuff in there. So ask away, ask questions, and like Ray said, there's a lot of good stuff around Lake Park and redevelopment of Lake Park and potential revenue that could come from cabins and so on. There's a lot of good stuff. So just come with open ears, hear him out, and hopefully Bob can help as well answer any questions you guys may have. Well, there's some really good stuff in there around the parks, and we're, like Anna said, we've been working 2 years, just like what we've seen here. This is what Bob's going to come with. That's what we've been doing on the park board, is creating this like list of priorities and everything. So, of course, hearing all the input during all the meetings and then Vision 2025. So, really good stuff coming that you're going to hear on January 8th. So, I should look forward to that.
Awesome.
Super.
Move to adjourn?
Second?
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
At 2:30 tomorrow, I get the longest break.